Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're going to start in a moment to allow folks to enter into the meeting from the lobby. Hi, and welcome. My name is Michelle Cunningham, Marketing Outreach Coordinator at Healthcare Workforce Development. We are excited that you have joined us today. Before we begin, I'd like to discuss a few housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded and posted on our website. The chat option will be open throughout the entire webinar. Please feel free to place questions in the chat, and we will entertain those questions during the multiple Q&A sessions. In addition, during the Q&As, your mics will be enabled and you'll be able to raise your hand to ask questions. This webinar is separated into 3 segments. The first will provide an overview of SWEES, and we will entertain questions on that topic during the first Q&A period. The second segment provides operational details of the grant program, and we'll have a Q&A for that topic. The third segment briefly discusses the application and annual reporting process. We'll open up for Q&A, plus we will entertain any other questions you may have. This slide deck is posted on our website. I am thrilled to introduce our first presenter, Ann Powell, Health Program Specialist with the Healthcare Workforce Development. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Michelle. So let me just briefly describe the purpose of this program. And I'll preface my remarks by saying that if you have attended this, the first webinar, if you could note that in the chat so we can track how many new people this information is new to. And we will, in the interest of time, kind of move through this content quickly so to maximize question and answer time. So the purpose of the program is to increase the supply of social workers trained to provide behavioral health care to children, youth, and adults served in public and nonprofit settings. Approximately $60 million is available to fund public and private universities, and that the purpose or the use of this money is to increase the number of social work students in MSW programs, existing programs, and to assist universities to obtain accreditation for new MSW, BASW, and BSW programs. Next, in terms of awards, HCI may award full, partial, or no funding to an applicant based on the applicant's criteria score and the amount of available funds. Allocation of funds will also depend on evaluation results and geographic coverage across California. New programs, the money is primarily, almost entirely, for the national accreditation effort. And program expansion is to support operational costs associated with admitting new MSW, I should say, instead of admission, let me say enroll additional MSW students with the first year of activity dedicated to developing the expanded program and recruiting faculty and field placement sites. This grant also provides that no funding can be used to supplant activities in from another source, funded by another source for the same purpose. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of, okay. Next slide. All right, so I don't know what happened to the last slide. I apologize for that. The program expansion is a 5-year grant period. The first year, as I mentioned earlier, dedicated to developing expansion activity that includes securing CSWE approvals, hiring faculty, recruiting new field placements, and admitting new students. Next slide. At this point, I'll turn it back to Michelle.
Great, thank you, Anne. And I've noted in the chat that participant stated the slides aren't moving on her end. I was going to provide the link to the slide deck. If Chris or Allison, if you could do that, that would be great. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, if you could please either raise your hand, which the hand icon is on the top of your screen with the reactions button. Once you raise your hand, you will be placed in a queue and I'll call on you. Your mic will be enabled and you'll be able to unmute yourself. To unmute yourself, the mic button's at the top of the screen. When you're finished with your question, please lower your hand icon and mute yourself. So either hands raised or in the chat. Okay, 1 second, please. From Peggy, Monterey Bay, in the chat. Can we give out scholarships in the first semester / year, January to June 2023? One of the charts has an NA to student support from this time.
It is envisioned that the first year is for program development. I will also note that we have other funding streams for scholarships, and we'll put the link to that. I'm sorry. We'll, at the end of this slide deck, you'll see a place where you can register to receive notices from us of other programs as they are opened. And one of the programs will be opening before the next academic year of 23-4 would be the a scholarship program. Next question.
Jill Barrick in the chat. Can you please respond to the following 2 questions? 1, is the data on payer mix required? Our field agencies are telling us these data are very difficult to produce and the request is highly burdensome. Will we be penalized if these data are not available from many of the agencies we work with? Then I'll hold the second question after this first.
Can I take that one, Ed?
Please.
So that is a scored question, and it is required just to the extent of that scored item. It's not a disqualifying question, but that could result in no points on that particular item of the application.
Second question from Jill Barrick in the chat. Question number 2. Some questions ask for a follow-up text response, except for question number 1, which allows for up to 1,000 words. Is there a word limit in the other text boxes?
Kevin, can you field that question?
Are you referring to, can you remind me which question you were referring to?
Except for question 1, which allows for 1,000 words, is there a time limit, or excuse me, a word limit for the other text boxes in the application? For example, the budget narrative.
Budget narrative. Let me double check that.
I think what I'll do is we'll answer that. I'll have Kevin address that during his part of the presentation, if that's acceptable, because he will be talking about the application scoring at that point while he's doing, so he'll have some time to check into that and get back to you. Michelle.
Thank you. And so Jill, feel free to follow up with us during Kevin's section. Thank you. Hand raised. Chris Hemerick, can you please unmute yourself?
Hi, yeah, this is Chris Hemerick. Thank you for taking my call. I was wondering either now or later in the presentation, if you could expand on what types of budget items would be allowable under student support. From your first description, it sounds like scholarships are not the intended purpose of this funding mechanism. So what would qualify under student support if not scholarships?
I think I'm going to defer that question to John Madriz when he makes his presentation, because he will be talking about those kinds of issues as part of financial questions.
Thank you.
Next question in the chat. From Sion Yu Ri, is there a restriction in the amount of student stipend?
Yes, that was my question. Because primarily we are serving first generation and minority students a lot. So the amount of stipend is a key factor in terms of the success of this expansion project.
So I'm sorry, repeat. Can you repeat your question?
The amount of, is there any maximum or minimum amount of stipend? Probably, since this is related to student stipend. So with the next, John may answer my question. So I just wanted to know, is there any maximum or minimum amount of student support, like in terms of stipend?
I'm going to defer again questions about funding to John in the next section. I do see some questions in the chat that
because we had a discussion about whether it should be yes or no. We have an MSW Advanced Standing program already, and also BASW program. And the question read, do you offer advanced standing to BASW students? So I just presented this question to a lot of faculty members, and some said yes, some said no. So I wanted to clarify with the HCAI. So I was to say yes or no.
In the application, it asks if you're going to use some of your grant for establishing or reestablishing your advanced standing program, MSW program. So that the answer would be yes, that if you choose to use some of your funds for that purpose.
So expansion of the ASB is kind of reestablishing the program. So that's why you suggest your Annie. So you suggest that it should be yes.
Yes.
How about the previous question? There is nothing like an advanced standing BASW program. So that's why we are confused. Do you?
We are not supporting BASW program expansion. We are supporting creating new BASW programs, but not expansion.
So that question, do you offer advanced standing to BASW students? So our answer must be no.
That is a question that you would have to pose to CSWE, the accrediting body, as to whether or not, or as to which bachelor in social work, Bachelor of Arts in Social Work is eligible for admission to an advanced standing MSW program.
So my question is, since we already have the ASB Advanced Standing Program, MSW ASB, so do we have to say no to that question?
I think in the interest of time, I'm going to ask if you would, at the end of the slide presentation, and actually on the slide here, you'll see an email. Maybe if you could give us detail and we can respond to you individually on this point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see a hand raised, Dalia Fuentes.
Hi, good morning. I have questions about the actual application. Will that be covered later in the
Yes.
presentation? Yes, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead, keep your questions coming in the chat. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next section. And I would like to introduce John Madriz, Grants Section Chief Manager. Thank you, John.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be going over the application basics, for applying for this SWIS program grant. First off, on the slide, we do have an online application, and in which you can apply under 3 different categories: the MSW program expansion, a new MSW program, and a new BASW or BSW program. You'll be asked to complete the application and identify the program that you wish to expand or to establish as a new program. We highly encourage you to review the PDF copy of the application before starting the online application. When you click on the link to the application, you'll also have a link to be able to preview a PDF version of the app. Also, if you go to our website, the HCI website under behavioral health programs, under the SWIS program, there's also a link to preview the application. And this will be really helpful for many people because oftentimes you want to be able to think over the questions before you fill out the online application to make sure you don't have any issues. Next slide, please. Okay, for requirements on the application, you'll be asked to provide any current or proposed field placement sites. With the site information, you'll be asked to identify the type of setting. For example, if it's an FQHC or a county behavioral health clinic and so forth. You will also be asked to upload a copy of a letter of sustainability committing a sponsoring organization to support new and expanded social work programs after the grant agreement ends. This is to ensure that after the funding is ended, we want to know that you have plans or you have support for continuing the program after the grant funding ends. Next page, please. Okay, the application budget for new BSW, and MSW programs. For establishing a new program, eligible programs may receive up to $1.5 million. For the expansion of an existing MSW program, eligible programs may receive $120,000 total per filled first-year position for up to 25 new students for up to 3 years. This is basically a capitation rate. This establishes the maximum amount of the grant award by letting us know just how many new students you plan to add with this grant budget. And indirect costs are not funded. I know we've had questions come up regarding that. We will be opening up new cycles in the future, so we'll take your recommendations into consideration. But for this cycle, for this program, we're not funding indirect costs. Next page. So key dates. So as you know, the application was open on August 29th of this year. The deadline is coming up October 28th, 2022. We anticipate sending out notices to awardees on November 29th. And the proposed or projected grant agreement start date is on January 27th of 2023. Next slide. Okay, at this point, we'll open it up to questions. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, John. In the chat, we have from Laura A. The issue of payment at the end of the grant year and not before or during is a primary concern for many. We would like HCI to consider quarterly invoicing or a different system than what is proposed. The current funding structure will prohibit at least a handful of our universities from even being able to apply. From an equity perspective, It also disadvantages less resource schools who host student populations that we would like to be able to support. In solidarity, CAD programs will request that the payments be made quarterly upon invoicing.
Thank you, and thank you for that suggestion. We'll definitely take that into consideration. For this cycle, on our sample grant agreement, we are making payments in arrears for the expansion of existing programs. For new programs, we have payments made based on meeting certain criteria in which we allow for some advance payment, partial payment before making a full payment once the program is fully established and accredited. But for expansion program for this cycle, we are making payments in arrears, but we will take that into consideration, your suggestions. One thing I did want to follow up on a question that was asked earlier during Ann's presentation regarding student support. So in their budget, there is a line item for student support. As an applicant for this grant program, you can decide the level of support and how much financial support you wish to provide to the students that are participating in your program. However, as Ann mentioned, we do want you to be aware of the fact that we do have scholarship programs that provide support for students, studying social work. And so, for example, some of our programs, Allied Healthcare Scholarship Program, we allow up to $25,000 scholarships. And then we're in the process of developing some new behavioral health scholarship programs next year that will include, support for students studying social work. And at this point, we anticipate them awarding up to $25,000, possibly more. So I want you to be aware of that there are programs out there that do support, provide support to students, and we encourage your students to apply for these scholarship programs. We're also developing a stipend program, and we hope to be able to roll that out next year that we anticipate or we project will support up to $25,000 stipends for individuals who are studying going through their master's for social work and perhaps some bachelor's. And so there are opportunities within HCI for students to apply for financial support. And then that way you can leverage that support when developing your grant application for your own, your own programs. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Sean. Hand raised, Peter Allen Lee, please unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm from San Jose State University, and I just wanted to follow up on Laura's question. Thank you so much for providing this opportunity. Our colleagues are very excited about the funding. It's so needed, and these are the things that we're hoping to help to expand the workforce. Just a little bit of insight about that issue about the payment in arrears is that I belong to one of the universities that is an example of where we would love to propose a significant amount in our budget, but the way that our bureaucracy works is that we just don't have any type of funding that would provide the backup to pay for these particular things up front, and to have the billing and the arrears at the end of the year, especially with the part about the approved report, is something that's preventing us from being able to move forward in a facilitated manner. Do you have any suggestions, especially for this round, about how you could help us navigate that bureaucratic struggle that we have at our university and many other universities? Because we would love to apply, but if we propose a significant amount, there's just no way that our university could front that money. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments on this. Like I said, this is something that we may be able to address in a new cycle, next year, which we intend to open, early next year, perhaps spring or summer. But I do want to. I know we worked with other programs in past years where we awarded a grant, and some of those programs were able to use that guaranteed grant funding as a tool, leverage as leverage to be able to get the support from their institution, or to find other sponsors for support, knowing full well that this is guaranteed money. You know that once you submit your annual report and you meet the requirements under our grant agreement, then when you meet the deliverables, you will receive that full funding on an annual basis for under the expansion of existing programs. So some of the past applicants in prior cycles were able to use that guaranteed funding as a way of being able to leverage their financial commitment of their institution for the expansion of their programs. So that's the only advice that I can give at this point. But under our current cycle, we are making payments in arrears. We're not making quarterly payments, but we are making annual payments over a 5-year period for the expansion of existing programs. And for new programs, there is some money that is provided up front. And if you look at on our grant guide, we have a schedule in which we will be able to provide 25% of the grant for a new program, and another 25% if they're meeting certain criteria, and then the remaining 50% after achieving accreditation and all of the requirements for establishing a new program. So I understand how your concerns, and we'll take that into consideration.
Could you also please answer the question that was posed about the scholarship and stipend? And given that it's payment in arrears, could the stipends be given at the end of the cycle when we know that the students and our program have fulfilled the requirements?
That is total. This is what's nice about this program. As a grantee, you decide when payments will be made for either stipends or scholarships for any funding that you indicate in your budget for financial support for the students. But for our programs, like our scholarship programs, we do provide a significant amount of the funding in advance for students who apply for our scholarship programs. And then, so that way there is financial support for students, and that can include the cost of tuition and fees, on-campus room and board, allowances for books, supplies, transportation, loan fees. So all of that is available through our program. So I really would recommend that you take a look at our scholarship programs, and specifically the Allied Healthcare Scholarship Program. Even though that cycle is closing on October 31st, at the end of this month, we anticipate additional cycles next year. And like I said, that provides $25,000 scholarships. And we really would like to encourage our applicants and grantees to encourage the students to apply for these scholarships, not just for the individuals that you're adding under this program, but for current students that you have in your programs. Is an excellent opportunity. We have a substantial amount of funding available for scholarships. And we're also going to be developing, like I mentioned earlier, a new behavioral health scholarship program next year. And we're looking at augmenting other scholarship programs to include financial support for students studying social work. And we're also in the process of developing a new stipend program for MSW students. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to leverage the funding that's available for financial assistance for students studying social work. And I would encourage you to look at that, so that way you can leverage that, even within your grant application, knowing full well that there's opportunities for financial support for your students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great wealth of information, John. Thank you. In the chat, Melissa Teasel, are institutions expected to carry expenses for 1 year prior to reimbursement? This poses challenges from a cash flow perspective. for smaller institutions and those who have auxiliaries that manage grants. The guidance I'm referencing is, in quotes, HCI makes payment annually on arrears upon receipt of the annual program report, expenditure documentation, and verification of increased MSW student positions.
That's correct, and I think I've addressed that earlier. Yeah, I mean, that is, we understand their concerns and raised, and we appreciate them. We'll take that into consideration. We will be opening a new cycle for the SWIS program next year, and we'll take their suggestions into consideration. We're developing the new cycle of the program, but for right now, it is payments in arrears, annual payments. And like I mentioned earlier, many prior organizations that have received funding from us have been able to leverage this funding as guaranteed funding, that they take to their institution, and they're able to leverage that, knowing full well that the grant will cover those costs, and it's money they can count on as long as the deliverables are met each year.
Paulina Tagle in the chat. Oh, excuse me, Ronnie Swartz in the chat. How do we submit the proof of accreditation and sustainability letter?
In the annual reports, you'll have an opportunity to upload a copy of the proof of accreditation. So when you do receive it, you can scan it and upload it in our annual reports. So and then also, I mean, you're welcome to email us copies of the proof of accreditation too. And either way, but the annual report will give you an opportunity to upload a copy of the proof of accreditation.
Question in the chat from Paulina Tagle. Will the questions and answers in this webinar be posted? I can go ahead and take that, John. Yes, we're recording this webinar, and approximately 7 business days after this webinar, the webinar recording will be posted. It'll include the Q&A. For your reference now, the webinar was recorded from the September 8th SWIS webinar, and that is on our webpage currently. Another question in the chat from Sarah Taylor. I'm still unclear about how to report internship site information. We have dozens of agencies. How do we report on all of them? Should we choose just a few as illustrative, but not exhaustive?
In the facilities workbook document that in the application where you list the different site locations, we encourage you to identify as many site locations that you intend to have your students work at. So we encourage you to list as many as you can of the sites that you intend to work with under your program, and then collect the information that you can from those sites. So I would encourage you to include as much information as you can. In the comments section, you can also indicate to us site information, how many that you were able to provide information on, and how many that that you weren't able to for whatever reason. But for the purposes of the application, we would like you to include as much information. I think Kevin, who will be talking about the scoring criteria, will be able to give you more guidance on providing that information on the application cycle.
Hand raised, Dalia Fuentes, please unmute yourself.
Hi, as a follow-up to that, for the MSW expansion program application, in the facilities L&M 2 section, it has a drop-down list for selecting the program type of the field placement site, but we're not able to see the possible choices. Could you provide a list of what those choices would be, or what, or fix that glitch?
Yes, if that was a question asked in the chat, and just a few minutes ago in the chat, I added that list as a response. At 11:21, you can find a screenshot with all the different choices for that item.
Okay, and so in the application, how will we be able to select them if we can't see the drop-down list? How can we?
So the drop-down list will be accessible in the application. I think, are you referring to the preview or the PDF of the application where you couldn't see the full list?
Probably the preview is what I'm assuming.
In the application, that full list will be available.
Okay, and then when submitting the application online, is there a capability of saving a portion of it and then continue it later, or does it have to be submitted all at once?
We would strongly recommend submitting it all at once. There are some saving capabilities, but it's sort of cookies based. So if you use a different browser or depending on your IT setup, it might not be safe. So I would strongly recommend completing all the application in one go.
In one go. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, we're going to move on now and introduce Kevin McEvely, Research Data Specialist with Healthcare Workforce Development, and there will be time for more of your questions. Thank you.
Okay, so there are 3 different applications for the SWEETS program. The first being the expansion, the Master's of Social Work expansion, and the scored items in this application are based on the additional admission numbers and the advanced standing. And then an item that we've gotten a few questions about today are a set of questions on the active second year behavioral health field placement sites. So John was asked a few questions about the facilities, and I just wanted to clarify that we're only asking about active second year behavioral health field placement sites for those. We'll ask for the address and the number of students at each site, and then there's a drop-down menu for the type of sites and the payer mix. So just wanted to clarify a few things on that. For these 3 items on the slide, HPSA score, rural field placement, those will be automatically scored by HCI. We can just find the HPSA score and the field, the rural or urban or frontier. We can find that based on the address. For payer mix of field placement sites, I just wanted to clarify my response to an earlier question about if this is required or not. This question will need to add up to 100%. So there are 4 categories here: Medicare, Medi-Cal, dually eligible, Medi-Cal, uninsured, or other. And for each site, each active second year behavioral health field placement site will need a combination of those paired mixes to add to 100 to submit in the application. Next slide, please. We'll also ask for the languages spoken by graduates for prior 3 years based on Medi-Cal threshold languages. We'll ask about a set of recruitment strategies to promote student success, workforce areas and unmet need strategies, and strategies to implement culturally responsive care training into the program's curriculum. So the MSW expansion program application is going to be a lot lengthier than the new program applications. If we could go to the next slide. For both of those programs, we'll be asking about the new enrollment numbers and then those strategy questions, and those will be the scoring criteria: recruitment strategies, strategies to promote student success, workforce in areas of unmet need, and strategies to implement culturally responsive care into the program's curriculum. Next slide, please. Annual program reports. We might be missing some text here, but as John mentioned, there'll be an annual program report to programs that are awarded that will go out at the beginning of July, and awarded programs will be required to fill this out for ongoing funding. And we'll be asking about numbers of students and some socio-economic or some socio-demographic data on the students, as well as budgetary questions and those forms that John was talking about to upload each year for the continued funding. Next slide, please. All right, so that's all on the scoring and the annual reports. Are there any additional questions that I didn't see in the chat?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I'll go ahead and start with in the chat, Jill Barrick. The RFP indicates that the purpose is to grow the behavioral health workforce with an emphasis on child youth behavioral health. Should we assume that 100% of new SW student slots should be dedicated child youth behavioral health, or can some percentage of our new slots be dedicated to adult behavioral health?
Let me answer this question. So it's children, youth, and adults. And we recognize that part of our funding stream is also with regard to other social work areas such as child welfare and adult protective services.
Hand raised, Lisa Lopez. Please unmute yourself. Chris, if you can, thank you, Chris.
Hi, I have a question about the MSW expansion program, the criteria. Where is criteria number 3 captured in the application, the proportion of children and adolescents served by the agency? I didn't see where that was entered anywhere.
Oh, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of my slides. When you're looking for the scoring criteria, please refer to the addendum on the same website. We had some changes to the scoring criteria, and you can find all of the up-to-date information on scoring criteria in that addendum.
Thank you.
Next question in the chat. Please scroll, there's quite a few. Thank you for your patience. Sonia Lenz Rashid. We have many HCI eligible internship placement sites that students are not placed in this year. Do we put them in the portal as active internship sites?
Thank you, Kevin. I'll hop in on that one if you don't mind. Hi, everyone. This is Ross Dalian at HCI. So we want only the active sites that you guys are using. If a site's not active, you don't have to worry about providing that information to us. And Sarah, hopefully that helps out with the question you had about it being burdensome. We appreciate you providing those data. We know it is burdensome, but only the active sites is what we're interested in. Thank you.
Hand raised, Carolyn McAllister.
Okay, this is probably, I'm going to ask the question. So our plan has been to put an MSW program on our second campus. So we have an MSW program on our one campus. We would like to put one on a second campus. Is that an expansion or is that a new program? Because it requires CSWE approval to do it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, let me try to address your question.
Yeah.
As we in our conversations with CSWE, what they tell us is that there's a program review during and when there are expansion having to do with maintaining student to faculty ratios.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their usual full-blown accreditation review.
That's correct. That's correct.
And so if you are talking about creating a new program, and then there would be a full accreditation review.
Okay, so your guidance then is if we have to do start from the beginning accreditation review, it's a new program. If we need to do and we just did it for the bachelor, so I know what you're talking about, that's an expansion. And the one follow-up comment I wanted to make is I recognize you're saying active sites. This is to go back to the prior question that Sarah had, but for many of us, those may be 150 easily. So that's why we're concerned about providing the information for each of them, because our active sites may be over 150, maybe 250. So that's to ask each of those agencies puts a huge burden on us in the next 12 days. Thank you.
Hand raised, Chris Hemmerick.
Hi, thank you. I had two questions. One is just a request for more information. I heard a comment that there's an addendum to the scoring guide. I was wondering if you could post a link to that. I also heard you say that there's a link available to the previous webinar, and I don't see either of those on the website. If you could provide those links in the chat, I would greatly appreciate it. And then my second question I'd like a response to is how you calculate the expansion. So you talk about a maximum of 25 students per year. So if I just were to give a scenario that, say, our baseline right now is that we admit 25 students per year, would you be looking for us to admit 50 students in year 2 of the grant and 50 students in year 3 and 50 in year 4? Or would you be looking for those numbers to increase 50 in year 2, 75 in year 3, and 100 in year 4? I hope that's clear. I'm happy to clarify further.
So if I understand your question correctly, in your example, if you've got 25 students right now and you add 25 in year 1, that takes you to 50. And then you add 25 in year 2 or 3 would take you to 75. Yes, that is how the math works.
So you're looking for 25 new sites each year on top of the new sites from the previous year.
Oh, not sites, students.
Sorry, students. I apologize.
Yeah.
So you're looking for a kind of an exponential looking growth then.
Right, and that's for you to decide which of the 3 admission or enrollment years you want to increase your population of students.
Got it.
In the chat, Laura A. There is challenge with the limitation of 0% indirect costs. Some of our universities have contractual agreements for state grants around fixed IDC rates, and other university grant offices cannot approve funding with a 0% IDC built in. We are worried that in this issue may also exclude some universities from applying for or accepting these funds.
Hi, this is Laura Abrams. So, as president of CAD, those 2 issues, no indirect costs and payment in arrears, and we work with, we represent all of the current MSW and BSW programs in the state. Yeah, we're just concerned that many of us won't be able to apply at all, which would, I think, defeat the purpose of this incredible opportunity to strengthen the behavioral health workforce. So there's some structural issues that are may preclude many universities that you want from being able to even submit an application. So we just thought you should be aware of that. And it sounds like you don't want to change any of this, which I understand from your perspective, but we're just trying to broker these arrangements between social work programs as directors and deans and our universities. And what we're finding is a lot of roadblocks around the structure of this grant that are beyond our control as deans and directors, but are more at the university contractual agreement level. And so it sounds like you don't have an intention to change for this grant cycle, but I just wanted to let you know that at least half of the representative programs that you're interested in all likelihood won't be able to apply for this grant the way that it's structured. Thank you.
Peggy from Monterey Bay, can you clarify the 3 years for MSW expansion? The program period is 4.5 years. Why the variance?
Can you say more about what the 4.5 variance represents?
Peggy, are you able to jump on and mute yourself?
The committee is reviewing testimony regarding potential obstruction.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So if you look at the table, there's a bunch of different tables that seem to contradict each other. So there's like a program table that I don't have it in front of me, but it's like from 23 to 27. which is 4.5, is that again, that half a year, and then there's the 4 academic years. But now you're
Mhm.
saying 3 years for the students. So
Yes.
I'm a little
So what-
confused.
Yeah, I get it. So as we said, this first period of time is for development. That gets us through to your actual academic year beginning of 23-4. And then in 23-4, 23-5, and 23-4, 24-5, and 25-6 would be the admission of new students for a 2-year program, which would conclude their coursework in that final 5th year. If they're 3-year students, it's just 2 years of enrollment because they would be taking longer to complete the program.
Sorry, can you repeat that last part again?
So if you're admitting part-time students that take 3 years to complete the program, then they would you would have them enrolling in 23-4 and 24-5 new cohorts each of those 2 years, with the idea that that second cohort of 24-5 wouldn't complete their coursework and graduate until 26-7.
Can we do a mix of 2-year and 3-year?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Thank you.
In the chat,
Oh, go ahead.
thank you. In the chat from Sylvia Berrigan, for the MSW expansion program application, in the, I don't really section, I think she linked, but I'm not sure. It has a drop-down list for selecting field placement sites. Would it be possible to provide a list of possible drop-down choices? I think, Kevin, you answered this, right?
Yes, I can send that again so that it pops up again at the end of the chat for everyone. So
Okay.
That list is at the bottom of the chat.
When submitting the application online, will there be a capability of saving a portion of the application and then continuing later on? Or should all the information be submitted at one time?
I think we covered that one, but just again, we would strongly recommend completing it and being ready to complete the application all at one time. There is some save functionality, but we would recommend that you complete it all in one go, because the save could potentially not work. It's just based on browser cookies.
In the chat from Melissa Tietzel, for expansion, can you clarify if this is 25 students annually?
Say that again. Read that again.
Sure, sorry about that. Melissa Tietzel, for expansion, can you clarify if this is 25 students annually?
It is for 3 years. Again, as I laid out in the numbers earlier, 2-year admissions would be for 3 years. 3-year part-time students would be 2 years of admissions. The idea is that they all graduate by the end of the grant cycle in 26-7.
Hand raised, Chris Hemmerick.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to bring back a question I asked early in the session. I know we're getting to the end of the time. You made it very clear that student support should not include scholarships or stipends. So could someone clarify for me what would be acceptable to use these funds for student support in that budget line item?
Oh, no, it is acceptable. I'm sorry, this is John Madris. It is acceptable for you to use student support for scholarships and stipends within your own program. I just wanted to point out that we have our own scholarship and stipend programs, available, in 2023, and you can leverage that funding so you don't have to exhaust all the available funds under this grant opportunity for that. So as a grantee, you get to decide specifically the kind of student support you wish to fund under this grant. But I just wanted to point out that there's other resources out there that you can leverage to support your students.
Thank you.
In the chat, Paulina Taggle, when you say that you will take in consideration the requested quarterly payment option, did you mean for this cycle or for the next cycle?
I meant for the next cycle, but we are going to have we will take your recommendations into consideration, and we do intend to have a discussion regarding it. But as of right now, the annual payments and arrears is what's included in our grant guide and in our sample grant agreement. But all I can commit to is that we'll take your recommendations into consideration for our own internal discussions.
In the chat from Sarah Taylor, CSWE does not require existing MSW programs to apply for any additional permission to establish a part-time program, as long as it is being offered in the same site, physical space, or online as the existing program. Given this, can expansion funds be used to develop a new part-time program?
This is Ann Pell. I think we've addressed this question. Yes, as long as it's not a full CSWE review.
From Chris Hemmerick, will you please clarify the expansion numbers for MSW programs? Is it 25 new students in each of 3 years, or 25 new students in year 2, 50 new students in year 3, and 75 new students in year 3?
So again, we covered that, but basically if you admit or you enroll 25 new students in year 3, 4, then add additional students, new students enrolled in 24-5, and then a third year of new students, that would take you to 75 new, an increase of 75 students in your base.
From Beverly Buckles, what would be an example of a program not meeting the grant criteria that would result in disallowing reimbursement?
Could you be clear? Could you clarify what you're asking?
Yeah, this is Bev Buckles. Can you hear me? I can't
Yes.
tell if, okay, thank you. So it's stated that it's reimbursed in the arrears if the grant or if the criteria is met. So for example, if we had a student who goes on leave, which is something we don't control, students have all kinds of human things that happen to them, would that be a disallowance of one of or part of the funding that we had already fronted? So we might not meet our number if we had a 25 and only 24 actually finished the full year. Does that make sense?
Yes. So I think John can answer this question.
So the funding in arrears basically covers the actual costs within the program. If a student drops out, doesn't participate, I mean, you have the option to give them an extension of time to come back and complete their program, or to select another student in their place. The actual annual report, you list the actual expenses of the program, and then we reimburse you for the costs incurred. So if, for example, you intended to recruit 25 students and you only recruited, say, 20, then the funding itself would be reduced appropriately. But and then we'll have an opportunity for us to adjust the budget for subsequent years. So basically, it's based on the actual expenses incurred in the program expansion each year.
Okay, so just to drill down a little bit on the quarterly or semester basis, if a school is on, if we're giving a scholarship, we would do that based upon the term of enrollment. And so if a student only enrolled for one of the whatever number of terms, then we would put that in our invoice, in our annual report, And that portion could be reimbursed since we had already dispersed it, even if the student needed to extend and numbers needed to be reworked. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, what we do is we work with the grantee to address those type of issues. So we try to work with you on it so that any actual expenses you incurred, we would reimburse. And so if you awarded a student a scholarship and if you paid them up front, you would notify us of that, and that would be an actual expense that was incurred. But we would work with you on this so that we can ensure that you get the full reimbursement of your actual expenditures for each year.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
All right, appreciate the robust conversation, and we're coming up to time for the end of this webinar. I see many more questions in the chat. We're going to capture them as a team and we'll respond to you. And also you see the email address on the screen. That's the best place to contact us for further questions. In wrapping this up, I'm going to introduce our Deputy Director for Healthcare Workforce Development, Karen Rizal, and she will have some closing comments. Thank you all.
Absolutely. Thank you all for taking the time to attend this second webinar as we share information about our program. As was shown here on the slides, if you have further questions, here's an email address for you to contact us. We are always available to answer questions, and we encourage getting any information on other programs that we operate, such as, for example, the scholarship programs that John was discussing earlier. We do really appreciate your interest in the program. We look forward to your applications, and we do take your comments and questions into consideration and very seriously as we continue to improve the programs that we operate and offer. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you.